Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs, I'm listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
You can't take a shortcut. You got to be willing to be all in no matter what comes your way.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry. There's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, you're listening to the Moved by Purpose podcast with your host, Stephanie O'Brien. And today, I'm very honored to have this guest today. His story is very inspiring, and I know that you, the listener, will be very, very blessed by his story and inspired to stay the course and keep going on your journey to live the life you love. And his name is Matt Miller. Matt Miller spent the first 9 years of his career as an Air Force pilot before entering the private sector to work in both the medical device and advertising industries. While a top performer in the corporate world, his long-term desire was to be his own boss. A good friend one day mentioned the gumball machines he and his young daughters owned, and that conversation began a 10-year business quest that has brought Matt's company, School Spirit Vending, to the cutting edge of both the vending and school fundraising industries. Today, School Spirit Vending's franchising program provides a proven and profitable business system for busy professionals and their families looking to develop secondary income streams with a limited time commitment. Welcome to the show, Matt. It is an honor to have you as a guest today.
Hey, Stephanie. Thanks for having me on.
It is my pleasure. So the first question I ask almost every guest is if you could give us a brief background of your work history and what led you to start your business that you run today.
I started, believe it or not, as an Air Force pilot, graduated from the United States Air Force Academy out in Colorado Springs in 1989, and for the next 9 years, flew all over the world, first as an Air Force instructor pilot in Lubbock, Texas, and then as a C-5 transport pilot out of Dover, Delaware. Loved flying, but was ready to move on and felt that I could reach much higher potential doing other things. So I jumped from the military once my commitment was up and interviewed with about 60 different companies through a junior military officer recruiting firms that are out there, and ended up working with a company called Abbott Labs for about a year and a half out of Houston, selling hospital diagnostic equipment. From there, moved into the advertising space, selling direct mail advertising for the largest direct mail company at that time called Advo, and ended up spending 11 years in that space. Several years in to working in the advertising world, I ended up being the top salesperson number 2 salesperson in our company of about 750 reps. Had a great year, was in the right place at the right time, and applied the work ethic that I learned in the military as well. Well, my boss didn't like that too much, and she thought I got too many accolades too quickly. And so the next year she increased my quota by 96%. Now, to give you an idea, the average quota increase in the office was 5 to 10%. So anyway, I went from being a hero to a zero overnight. That decision cost my family, upwards of $80,000 the following year, and we went from just working ourselves out of a hole after coming out of the military and taking a pay cut to being in a much deeper hole. And I just realized at that point in time that looking at the compensation plan, looking at the realities of my position where I was and what the limitations were, there was no way I was going to work myself out of that hole anytime outside of years, just purely relying on my job. So I started looking to do some other things. We recycled cans for a while. We sold books out of our garage. My garage at one point looked like a library with all the shelves lining it. as I was selling on a number of websites online, any used book that I could get literally anywhere. The challenge with all the stuff that I had done previously, though, was the fact that I was just creating another job for myself, and I didn't want to create another job. I had read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki several years before, bought into the whole idea of passive income, and so I was measuring everything that I was coming across and trying against Robert's thought process, and none of it added up to where ultimately I wanted to be. Around that time, a good friend of mine at church mentioned some gumball machines that he and his young daughters had purchased, and they were growing a business together and selling gumballs and spending time together as a family. And I remembered that, and so I jumped into vending initially with candy and gumballs, and then toys and temporary tattoos and stickers, and kind of taught myself that business. Then 07 and 08 hit. The market tanked. I was frustrated with the revenues that I had brought in. I had about 150 locations at that point in time, and right around that time, 4 young kids came knocking on my door in the span of a couple of weeks, selling me stuff for their school to raise money. And I was like, these kids should not be out selling door to door for their schools without their parents or anything. So that's kind of where the whole idea for School Spirit Vending came about. And here we are 8 years into it, and rocking and rolling.
Wow, that's amazing. And your story just touched on so many things, and I know that there's someone listening that can really resonate with your story. I get written in a lot by people that are really financially struggling, and it seems like every time they get close to getting out of their hole, that something happens to prevent them from moving forward. So I think it's really awesome that you started thinking differently about how you're going to take care of the problem. And one of the things I noticed while you were sharing this story is that you were always looking for a solution and trying to resolve it rather than focusing on the problem and kind of accepting that it is what it is, and that you're going to just always be in this hole and always struggling, eking by, and taking on a victim mentality. Go ahead.
What I've learned is you and I are not a sum of what happens to us. We need to separate ourselves from the circumstances we're in and look at ourselves as the miracle that God created with a definite purpose, and we just need to find that purpose and realize that we all deal with junk. We all deal with stuff on a regular basis that we can't control, and you can either be a victim, like you said, or you can be a victor. And I knew I was better than where I was at. I literally got to a point where I got turned down at a payday loan place during the lowest period of time financially for my wife and I and our family. Now, in a payday loan place, you don't even need a credit rating, but you do have to bring in a bank statement and prove that you didn't have any dings to your bank account the month before. And I had 3 overdrafts that previous month, so I got turned down. Here I am, America's finest, Mr. Former Air Force pilot, Air Force Academy graduate, man, down in a gutter as far as circumstances. But I knew I wouldn't stay there if I was just willing to work my way out. Was it easy? No. It took a number of years. But the reality is anything worthwhile takes time. Malcolm Gladwell talks about in Outliers, 10,000 hours that it takes to truly be an expert at anything. Unfortunately, in our society today, too many of us have this microwave mentality, this get-rich-quick mentality, and it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's hype. And hard work is required for anything that's great. I'll give you a great example. I'm blessed to have I picked up guitar about 3 years ago. One of the things I've always wanted to do. I now have time to do it. Well, my teacher is a guy by the name of Carol Parham. He's a Hall of Famer in the Country Music Hall of Fame. The guy has played with anybody in the bluegrass and gospel arenas. The guy's amazing. Well, he tells me one day when we sat down, we got to playing, and he's like, Matt, I had somebody come in here today. They walked in and they said, okay, I want to learn how to play guitar. There's this one song I want to learn. How long is it going to take me to learn it? And he knew just by that question that they weren't in it for the long haul, and he told them, sorry, I don't have any time on my schedule to work with you. You can't take a shortcut. You got to be willing to be all in no matter what comes your way.
Absolutely. And you're right about all the hype and because it does, like, that marketing triggers people's emotions. We want success fast, and we want it easy, and we don't want to work for it. And so when some marketers trigger all of those points, while that marketer may end up temporarily being successful making sales, I think they're going to end up getting some pretty angry people when when they realize that all that hype wasn't the reality of what's involved.
Yeah,
and what's in the situation.
I had a guy that contacted me from Canada the other day about becoming a franchise in our business, franchisee, and he's done work in the vending industry before. And he and I talked on the phone the other day. I gave him some basic information about what we're doing, and he sent me an email back later and said, you know what, Matt, when you answered to me, the fact that this is a long-term deal, when you answered to me the fact that the equipment that I would be buying affiliated with your company is the exact cost that I can find elsewhere in the industry, I knew you weren't a short-term, get-rich-quick kind of guy, that you were committed to me and my business and to running a legitimate business in our space. There's too many that just want to get in, get out, make their money, and move on. And what I've learned that real fulfillment in life, and we have a long-term outlook with our schools to where our program is an ongoing thing year after year after year. But we also have a long-term outlook with our franchisees. We're going to grow old together, so we need to be real with one another and realize that there is work involved, but because of the passive nature of what we do and how we do it, there's no more fulfilling way and in the long-term simple way to make income.
I totally agree. And, touching on the point where you're honest about it being long-term, I was recently I'm doing my first seminar, and I'm learning like copywriting and things like that. And one of the people I was following, I wasn't quite sure if it was resonating with me because it was giving a very gimmicky vibe. And so I just asked for feedback, and that's exactly what one of the feedback I got was like, this doesn't sound like you. It immediately looks like a gimmick, and I don't think you're going to attract people that I know you want to work with, which are people that want to kind of that overnight success and want that get rich quick and don't want to put the hard work on it, and that will later kind of resent that they have to work so hard. So I totally agree. Now, before we were talking, or before we officially recorded the show, you mentioned that you also had bootstrapped the business and that it took quite some time to build it to be sustainable. Were you, and you also you said you were selling a lot of things on the side. Were you doing that in your job where it was your quota was increased so much that the pay ended up getting hit really, really hard? Or did you transition to something else in the meantime?
No, I stayed at the same job because regardless of the mess, regardless of the things I didn't like, the one thing that the job gave me was some freedom. I worked out of the house. Aside from that 1 year, I was a top performer in our office year in after year after year. So I continued to fulfill my obligation for my career to do what I was getting paid full-time for. But I was like a duck on water. A duck looks, real cool and mellow and all that up above, but down below they are paddling like there's no tomorrow with those feet. And I was the same way. In fact, when I left my job 4.5 years ago, my boss was completely shocked. He had no idea it was coming because I had always done what I was asked to do. And but outside of that, nights, weekends, time off, vacation time, I was busting my rear. I delivered pizza on the side for a while to bring in more seed capital for my business. I know you had Christy Wright on your show not too long ago, and her boss, Dave Ramsey, talks about, if you're looking for a way to add some extra income to get out of debt, deliver pizzas. Well, I remembered hearing Dave's talk on that, and that's one of the things I did. One of the most humbling things I've ever done is walk in and ask for a job as a pizza delivery guy as a 42-year-old, quote-unquote, white-collar professional. But I had to do what I had to do, and I wasn't doing this for anybody else but me and my family. So I had to eat some humble pie. I had to deliver a bunch of pizzas in a cheesy pizza delivery outfit to people from my church and people in my community that knew who I was and knew what I did, but I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. And those were the steps that I had to take to make it happen. Was it easy? No. But I can now talk about it victoriously today because I was willing to do whatever it took during those struggling, and challenging times. Coming outside the other side today, we live out in the country. We don't have to deal with traffic and all that we used to have to deal with. I have pretty much total control over my time and my schedule. I get to work with and help the people I want to work with and help along the way. I get to do a little traveling when I want to go out and work with our team around the country. And more than anything, I get to spend time with my family and working with my church and organizations that are most important to me, because I figured out how to get the whole money-making thing out of the equation to where now I can focus on what's really, really important in life. And I help others do the same thing with our business.
That's amazing. And you did it. All that, eating that piece of humble pie to do what you needed to do to really fulfill your dream. What were some of the things that you had to, because I'm sure it wasn't easy emotionally and mentally on you at the time, but what were the things that you kept before you? And I know you said like it wasn't about that. Did you focus on the why you're doing this? Did you focus on the people you're serving, the dream that you want, that you'll get the passive income and soon enough? What kind of things did you kind of have to tell yourself on the tough days?
I lived in a 1,200 square foot house, 5 of us, my wife and our 3 kids and I. Our living room for several years looked like a vending machine assembly factory. We were piled on top of each other like cordwood. Quite honestly, my wife was embarrassed to have people over, but we didn't have a choice. It was a rental. It was in a lesser neighborhood in the city that we lived in outside of Houston at the time. There was a lot of things that the world around me would look at and I'm sure wonder about. But you got to do what you got to do. And we have all been given our own crosses to bear. We've all been given our own struggles that will come at us no matter what we do in our life. And I believe it's our job to work through them. Here's what I know. I lived in Colorado Springs for 4 years at the Air Force Academy. If you look at those beautiful mountains that are outside of my dorm room window every day, there's nothing growing at the top of those mountains. All the growth is in the valleys. So God was putting me through that stuff to prepare me, to mold me, to put me in a position to where today I literally lead hundreds of people within our organization, between our suppliers, between our franchisees, and all of their family members as well. It's a big responsibility. and a big obligation. And if I hadn't gone through that junk, if I hadn't gone through the financial difficulties previously and learning how to be humble, learning how to be patient, learning how to deal with and relate to people, I wouldn't have the business I have today. So was it fun? No. But looking back today, it was worth every minute of it because God was forming me. He was molding me, and there was a bunch of stuff I needed to learn, and the only way I was going to learn it was in the valley.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more on that because I've gone through and am going through my own refining fire or valley season, and or some people call it the labor pains, and it really is true. I have really big dreams, and I know that my business today isn't where I want it to be, but I know it will get there. But it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of humility. There have been things that I've gone through that were extremely tough on me. But in retrospect, and I know the lessons aren't done being learned, they'll never stop being. There's never going to be lessons I'm not learning until I die. But the person I am today, I wouldn't be this person if I did not go through those really, really tough times or those dark days. And, I feel like I have so much more. I always was a compassionate person, but I think that compassion grew even deeper now. And, I can, instead of talking from more of like a high horse as someone that never personally went through some of the pain that people went through, and I was the one that was always just, well, they just need to do this and they just need to do that. Like, I come from a place of like knowing it's really not that simple. And, I'm not the one going through it as they are. And so I've just learned, even through my own painful season, what to do as a friend, what not to do as a friend, and what to do to stop the growth and prevent it and drag it out, and what to do to learn from it and move on and accept it as fast as possible. Yeah, absolutely. The dark days or the growth, and almost every guest I have has said that it's through very painful seasons where they have grown the most. They don't necessarily want to go back there, but they're very grateful for the gift and the blessing that those days had for them.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So it has been fantastic hearing your story, Matt. You've just really inspired me. I know there's someone listening that was really encouraged by your story and your words. And, it's you're so right. It's hard work. And anything worthwhile takes time. And to be empowered and to keep going and to take the gift of the season, and it's a season, it's temporary, it's not forever, so it sounds like, from what I hear, it sounds like you went from like a mountaintop to the pits, really. And now you're back on steady ground. I was like, oh, that's a good title for the show. But, but yeah, and, a lot of people, I think, fear is what holds a lot of people back. And this probably does hit some fear points and emotions that people hear. They're like, well, I never want to go through that. I don't want to ever experience that. I don't even know if I could handle that. But everybody is different. God knows what we can handle. Comparing ourselves to others is really quite useless, but learning from other people's strength and their joy and their story, is wise. But for the person that is afraid, like I know there's people that are afraid of failure and they're afraid of success, and for others they're they're afraid of success because they're afraid of failure. It's almost like this interesting thing. They're like, they don't want to experience a mountaintop success to have to fall into the pit, you know. Some people, I think, can get used to failure after failure after failure, and they kind of get used to that and accept, you know, well, hopefully they don't accept that as their plight, but, you know, they might be tempted to. But you overcame, and I love that you shared that. Like, you are one of those people that had the mountaintop experience that fell right down into the pit, but you came out so resilient and so victorious, and now you're even better and even stronger than you were before. So I thank you for sharing that story, and I know that there's someone listening that really needed to hear your message.
Well, and I appreciate the opportunity. Can I just tell another quick story?
Yeah, I love stories.
I think it's important for people to understand. Now, thankfully, no one in my team, none of the franchisees that we work with will never have to go through this themselves. But they have to be willing to go through something similar in their business, whatever it may be. When I got started, it was me and a good buddy of mine by the name of Shane Duffy and Jeremy Rand. There was three of us literally covering the entire state of Texas. Now, you can drive from east to west in Texas, 18-hour drive. So the state is pretty big, as most folks know, just to put it into perspective. Well, we had just gotten started. It was we're about a year and a half in, and I had a principal from far west Texas, northwest Texas, contact me. She had met us at a trade show. Anyway, she loved our program. She gave some of the stickers that we had in our machine to her grandkids, and they just absolutely went nuts over them. So she decided she wanted to work with us. She calls me on a weekend. I'm actually on vacation in Wisconsin at the time. She said, Matt, I know you guys are pretty new. I know I'm a long distance away from you in Houston, but I was wondering if you would work with me in my school. Well, I had a choice to make as a very, very new and young business owner. I could either figure out a way to support that customer, or I could tell her no. And I didn't feel like I had any option but to tell her yes. Her school was 1,376 miles round trip from my house. Because of my work situation, I literally would turn a trip once a month visiting her school into essentially a 25, 26-hour day. I would get up early. I would drive straight to her school, get there just in time for the school to let out and for me to do my thing, and then hop back in the car and start driving home. Probably stopped along the way and slept a couple of times most trips before I finally made it home. 1,376 miles round trip. Now, she was the only school I was working with. I was losing money hand over fist if we were just looking at that small microcosm of a transaction. But here's what happened. In the next year and a half, she shared what I was doing with every other school in that district. And today my family can live off of that district alone. Why? I could be the best salesperson in the world, but I couldn't have had the effect that she had with her peers because she saw me be willing to serve. Now, I don't ask my team to do that because no one's territory, number one, is that big or that far away with our existing team and how it works today. But people do need to have that kind of mindset in whatever they do if they truly want to succeed. You got to do whatever it takes. And sometimes everyone around you is going to think it's completely nuts, but that's okay. They're not you. You're not doing it for them, and they can't relate because they're not in the middle of what you're in the middle of.
That's so true. And that's like such an inspiring story. And, you looked beyond it making financial sense. And that was, it's like the law of harvest. Like you sowed those seeds. You were dedicated to that. And now you have your harvest, which is awesome and a huge blessing. But most importantly, it was your heart to really serve the woman And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I hear that over and over and over again, the people that put years into serving people. And, you know, sometimes, I mean, like yours was a sacrificial service. You know, like that's a long time in a car. People complain over 3-hour commutes, and I just can't even imagine. It's good that you pulled over on the road to sleep, though. That's good to hear.
That was at my wife's prompting.
Yeah. So that's so inspiring. Thank you for that story. Okay, so I want people to be able to connect with you and know more about what you're doing, and how can they find you? What is the best way to get in touch?
My website is SSV, as in School Spirit Vending, ssvbusiness.com. And if it's all right with you, Stephanie, I'd love to give your audience just a token of my appreciation for being able to be on the show. I put together a short ebook. It's only a couple pages long, so it's nothing fancy, but it's called Live Your Dreams, the top 10 reasons why you need to start a vending business. You know, most people don't look at vending as a real business, but there's people that are using vending machines all over the planet every single day, every single minute of every day. And whether what I'm doing makes sense to folks, or whether they just want to get started with a couple of gumball machines like I did, I talk a little bit about the 10 reasons why they should do something like that on top of their career. The URL for that is ssvbusiness.com/moved, M-O-V-E-D, and would love for folks to reach out and help them out any way I can.
Awesome. I will make sure to put that link in the show notes, and make sure you grab that, especially with the power of passive income is beautiful. And I definitely know vending can be a very lucrative business. My own coach, Dan Miller, Matt, do you know who he is?
Yeah, actually, my coach is a counterpart of yours, Aaron Walker.
Oh,
and
okay.
At Social Media Marketing World, I was with Aaron in San Diego in March, and actually got a chance to have dinner with Dan and his wife on a couple different occasions that long weekend. So love those guys. So,
yes. Beautiful, beautiful couple. And I had Aaron on as well. He also has a beautiful story. But Dan also does talk about that vending is a lucrative business and a real business. And he gives multiple examples of vending services in his own disc profile. And I sell them myself as a form of vending. So he gives multiple examples, so that's awesome. So people that want to learn more, please make sure to connect with Matt. Thank you again, Matt. It was a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you, Stephanie, and God bless you.
Thanks. Okay. That was very good. I loved it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have been on.
So can you give me that? So it's ssvbusiness.com / I just want to make sure I have the right.
Moved.
What'd you say?
M-O-V-E-D.
Moved. Oh, cool. All right. Did you send me, if you haven't already, could you send a little bio, or did you do that already?
Yeah. I don't remember, Stephanie. I can't find it. Some of the emails that I normally have, so I might not have done it. So I will do that as soon as we get off the phone or get off Skype here.
Okay. A photo, bio that I can read, and then any other links if you want, like social media links and stuff like that. I will include all that in the show notes.
Okay. I've got a one sheet that I'll send over to you here in a minute that has all that on it, and then I'll send you a separate photo as well.
Perfect. Now, do you do speaking, Matt, or do you mainly do the vending?
You know, I would love to get started in doing that. We host an annual event for our entire team in June every year, and that's right now the only time I really get a chance to speak. I would love to do so. It's just figuring out how to make that happen on top of everything else that I'm doing and what have you. So But
yeah. Well, you said one sheet. So a lot of speakers have their speaker one sheet. That's why I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
So.
that's just a function of, are you familiar? Well, you know Tom Schwab as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he's from Michigan.
yeah, he's from Kalamazoo. I just finished his podcast guest course that he has, and putting together a pitch sheet or one sheet as part of that. So that was all learned from Tom, and then of course Jessica Rhodes at Interview Connections, they require that too. So I'm just trying to keep up with the whole podcast universe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Are you thinking of doing podcasting or just?
Actually, I took Cliff Ravenscraft's podcast course in May. I started an internal podcast in early June specifically for our franchise team, sharing best practices and interviews and success stories and all that. And then I launched a external podcast called School Zone Podcast about a month and a half ago, and that is specifically for educators, administrators, and volunteers in and around schools that are looking for unique and innovative resources and fundraising companies to potentially work with their schools. So we've got
smart move.
Got 7 episodes in the tank or in the can, and interviewing.
Is it launched yet?
Yes.
Is it live yet?
Yep, it's on iTunes, and it's schoolzonepodcast.com.
Can you let me know what that is? Because I'll send that over to my boyfriend's dad and stuff. Cause
yeah,
that's realm.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, great. So he can get acquainted with you, and when you get licensed in Michigan, because I think the concept is brilliant. I mean, the vending for fundraising for schools, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a genius idea. So
thanks. What's a good address for you, Stephanie? Because what I'd love to do, if you don't mind, is send you just a couple of packets of information and just have you hold on to them. And if you come across anybody to where what we're doing might make sense to, if you could just pass that along, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I'm going to type it right now.
Okay.
Rose, right in the Skype chat. Do you see it?
Yes. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anybody else that you know in the podcast community that you think might have interest in my story, but if there's anybody that you can think of that you could, forward a recommendation along to, that would be great.
Yes. I can think of some names. I'll check in with them. I know Scott Barlow would love to have you as a guest, and Jared Easley. If you are, if you also know anybody that could be a guest too, because I'm loving to have guests, and also anyone that you might think that I could be a guest on as well, because I'm trying to be more intentional about that.
Yeah.
So far, I've been focusing on finding guests, and now they've come pretty consistently. But now I need to try being a guest.
So tell me this: who do you see as your ideal avatar for your podcast?
You mean the who listens to it?
Yes.
Or okay,
yes.
Sorry. Okay. So the people that want that. They know they need to make a move, but they listen in for encouragement and inspiration to make that move. Dan Miller's podcast is very similar to my audience. They're just people that are kind of burned out in their careers and wanting something more, wanting that significance. They long to know what their purpose is, and those are kind of the people I reach out to. I'll talk business strategy and things like that. I've been featured on a couple business podcasts, but my favorite topic to talk about is just pushing through fear and building perseverance and resilience to really fulfill your purpose and live a meaningful life.
Well, let me ask you this. Aaron works with a bunch of folks on my team. He actually came to our event last June and is already scheduled to come this next year as well. what I have started to do is I've started to do interviews on our internal podcast to bring some outside influence and some outside expertise and help promote them internally to our team, but also provide some wisdom and learnings to the team. And one place that's really lacking that I regularly get feedback on from many of the women in the group is because Aaron only works with men, they kind of feel like they're left out in the cold a little bit. Would you be willing to come on even my show internally, and you and I just talk a little bit about you, what you do, and just some basic success principles? I think you'd be a huge blessing to the ladies, the wives in our team, and the single moms and all that, and it would also help you get your word out as well.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll shoot you a later on today, just a link with, from Schedule Once or whatever, so we can schedule a time, and then I can reciprocate with that. I do have a couple of folks in mind that I will also do an introduction to for you that I think would be great to be on your show as well.
Okay. And I'm writing down the people. There's 3 guys that I think you'd be a good fit with.
Okay.
It's Jared Easley. He's the guy who created Podcast Movement.
Right.
He's a podcast rock star. Scott Barlow with Happen to Your Career. And Matt Schaup, which looks like Shoop, but it's Schaup, with, I think it's Entrepreneurs or Superheroes.
Okay.
So I do see there being a great fit with their audiences.
Awesome. Well, I would appreciate an invite or an intro, and I'll do the same. And, man, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, Stephanie. This has been great.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've really, really enjoyed your story. You did a great job with the transparency of it, and I'm loving that I'm getting more and more guests that aren't putting up fronts that they, that, oh, it was just so great, and now they're on top of the world, but that they're real about what they went through. So, so thank you again.
Yes,
All right.
you.
Well, I'll get these emails out, and you can look for I'll CC you in them and connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. God bless, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
All right, take
you
care.
too.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye.
Real success in life is developed on the long term. It's developed on relationships. It's developed on long-term commitment to people and to their families and to their dreams. And that's what we do with our business.
And there you have it. That was Matt Miller with School Spirit Vending. Make sure you connect with him over at ssvbusiness.com. That stands for School Spirit Vending. If you will have a hard time remembering that, just click on the show notes or come on over to movedbypurpose.net. Search for Matt Miller's name in the search bar on the bottom of my homepage. His episode will pull right up, and you will see the links there as well. Make sure to connect with him. Reach out to him if his story inspired you, or if you want to know more about his business. If you are in the education industry and feel that his vending services could benefit your school and fundraising, make sure you connect with him. And also just let him know that you really liked his story. With that being said, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe, rate, and write a review to this podcast in iTunes and on Stitcher, either one you listen to. This really helps me get found by more people, and it helps the business grow. It helps more lives to change. It helps me increase impact, and you know that I love doing that. Also, make sure you check out my new website. I got a new homepage. I'm pretty excited about it. Or just the website as a whole. I think it's cleaner. It's easier to navigate and showcases what I do in a much cleaner way. So I'm pretty pumped about that. That's movedbypurpose.net. And big announcement. I am putting on my first live seminar. It's a one-day intensive. It is on mastering your mindset. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. So the work that I've done in the past few years with clients, and what I've noticed in my research and work with people I work with people. That didn't sound right, but you get what you're picking up what I'm dropping down. So anyway, the mindset is what really has held a lot of people back. There's been a lot of fear of success, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of control, fear of what people think of them. And fear has been what has inhibited people from living out the fullness and the abundance that Christ died for you to have. And whether you have the same faith as me, whether if you resonate with the Christian faith or not, we are created and designed to live in abundance, to live above and not beneath, to be on top. Now, this isn't to say that we don't have valley moments and tough times, because our character grows, we develop, just like we talked about, Matt and I talked about in this episode. But if you find that you're working really hard, that you've had idea after idea, but you find yourself in a repeated pattern of getting stuck, and it's not that you're not working hard. You're not afraid of hard work. You know hard work is involved and what it takes to be successful. But you seem to fall into patterns where every step you make in progress, there seems to be something that blocks you and prevents you from moving forward. And it's like you have to start all over again. And this training and seminar is uncovering the subconscious beliefs that have power over you, the unseen forces that have some control over you, that have you walking in that repeated pattern over and over and over again. And it's going to give you the tools and the power to finally break free from that and get your breakthrough that you've been pressing in, working hard for, praying for, and you haven't been able to see. So this will give you the tools. It's on mastering your mindset and being set free to live in the abundance and the success that you know and believe you are meant to walk in. And so you can learn more about that over under the events section of my website. It's called Mastering Your Mindset, and it is one day here in Greater Detroit, Michigan, actually in the Grosse Pointe area. Early bird price is $4.97. So if you are in the Michigan area, I would love to have you. I have guest speakers. It's going to be catered, so you're going to get treated really well with very good food, snacks. So food is provided for in this. You get a nice quality workbook, resources, and I'm keeping it, kind of a smaller event. It's not going to be thousands and thousands of people, because I want you to get that attention and be able to address questions that you have, concerns, and I want to be accessible to you. So this is going to be a life-changing seminar, and I want to see you hit some of your goals by the end of the year and be confident that the goals you set for 2016 will actually be achieved. So that's on November 14th. And again, the details are over at movedbypurpose.net. And I will talk to you all next week. Love you guys.